Hi, my name is Marc Southwell, and I'm super happy to be here for the Piwik PRO Day 2024, the first edition of Piwik PRO Day. I'm here to present to you how a study I've made on how you can optimize content rates on your website, or at least indications on how you could do that. Because what we've done is that we've reviewed 2,000 websites and we've found common denominators and things you shouldn't do in order to have as much data in a, of course, legal manner. Let me just make myself a bit smaller here. I represent both Piwik PRO and Cookie Information, but I'll get into an introduction of myself and the companies in just a second. Because where I want to start is the agenda for today. As mentioned, I think I said but I meant we here in Cookie Information have made a study of content rates across the Nordic countries, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland. But I do believe whether you're sitting in Germany, the US, France, or wherever in the world, that some of these findings that we've done across 2,000 websites can apply to you as well. Because what we've been looking at is a UX analysis of what the cookie pop-up can look like on a website and what can get you maybe higher data quality and what things you can do in your cookie pop-up that can maybe give you a lower data quality. So I'll go through an interesting finding I did in regards to industry. I'll go through this UX analysis. I'll of course show you what examples we're looking at, what kind of cookie pop-ups we're looking at, what implications we found from the study. And then what I would like to leave you with after this session is what can you do to test at home to see if you can get more people to say yes to cookies on your website and thereby get more data. I'd like to conclude that tied on to how Cookie Information plays very well with Piwik PRO and the possibility of anonymous tracking via Piwik PRO. My name is, as mentioned, Marc Southwell. I work within privacy online. I've been doing that for, all my career. But then again, age is just a number, but I work within the digital space. So how can companies make sure that they follow the law that applies to having a website, having a mobile app, collecting data and using that data? I represent first and foremost Cookie Information. Cookie Information is a content management platform. We were founded in 2018 and we currently serve around 6,000 clients, and our solution is live on more than 200,000 websites. An interesting thing that happened last year is that Cookie Information and Piwik PRO merged. So now we have the opportunity to serve a content management platform that can ensure that you collect data correctly. And then we have Piwik PRO Analytics and the customer data platform that ensures that you can then work with and enable that data once you've collected it correctly. So a super interesting sort of journey on data from your web or mobile app. Why did we do this study? Why was it important to look at content rates for our clients? And typically in a user journey, the website, when you enter a website, the first thing you meet these days is a cookie pop-up. And whether you as a website visitor say yes or no is quite important to the amount of data, the quality of data, and how the company owning the website can be enabled to be data-driven. So if it's the first touch point you have with a website, simply saying yes or no allows, how much data you can collect as a website owner. So it's a quite essential step in unlocking data collection later on. And the things that I'm going to show to you today, I would consider rather cheap and easy to test. You don't have to do large technical implementations or include cross-departmental collaboration to test this. What I'm showing you can be done with simple CSS changes, maybe even a bit of HTML, and can be done by a single person, I would say. And also, if we can get more data from the first touch point with our clients, that data escalates into better remarketing, retargeting, ad spend. It just escalates and optimizes data further down the funnel. The study we made was made in Danish websites, so websites that end with .dk, Swedish websites that end with .se, Norwegian websites, and Finnish websites. And what we did was we located websites with the 500 most consents per country. We were quite picky in what kind of cookie pop-up that the website used. So we located websites that only used the same kind of pop-up, so we could compare them to each other. What we then looked at was average consent rates, and we did this for the period from the 1st of January to the 15th of, and I'm bad at months, January, February, March, April, May, to the 15th of May. So that's the period of data collection. What we ended with after doing a bit of cleaning in the data and cleaning in the websites was that we ended up with 406 Danish websites, 358 Swedish websites, 340 Norwegian websites, and 349 Finnish websites. So that is sort of the sample size that we're looking at. What we found was that there's quite the difference in average consent rates across countries. And what I mean when saying average consent rates is that how many people, what's the percentage of users going to the website say yes to all cookies. In Denmark, we found that on these 406 websites, we found that 72.5% of the visitors said yes to all cookies. In Norway, 81.5%. In Sweden, 82%, and in Finland, 73.8%. And the first conclusion that can be done from this is that even looking at countries, one's expectation of how many consents a website can get has to vary from country to country. A fun extension one could do here is add other countries. One could look at all of the world if one had that much data. When you say average, there's of course many ways to look at that. I just wanted to give you the sort of the best performing website and the lowest performing website if we say that consent rates is a performance meter. So in Denmark, for example, even though we have a 72.5% average, the highest performing website, 92.1% of their website visitors accept all cookies. And in the other end of the spectrum, the lowest performing website only gets 53% of their visitors that say yes to all cookies. So there's a big difference even just within the country. Now, to be able to say something smart about this, we decided to drill down a bit more. And we decided only to look at Denmark. But as I mentioned, I believe that these findings that we have are applicable in any country. What we then did is we took the 600 websites that we had left, and we took the top 10% and the bottom 10%. The top 10%, so roughly 40 websites, have an average of 86.5%. that say yes to all cookies, and the bottom 10% have around 60%. So there's a 25 percentage point difference in being a top performer and a low performer. Now, I mentioned in the beginning that we'll be looking at a UX analysis. My background is as a front-end developer with a specialty in UX. Therefore, this was one way to look at it. There are, of course, also one could make a sort of a social or a sociology analysis. So why do users behave as they do in different countries with different brands? Are we looking at returning visitors or new visitors? Are we looking at organic traffic or paid traffic? One could also consider these factors into another analysis. A little fun finding that I just wanted to highlight was that in the top 10% of these websites, we find that there are only 2 public sector companies or organizations, and we have 17 e-commerces or web shops. And in the bottom 10%, so out of 40 websites, we find that we have 12 public sector organizations. And I think that was quite a interesting finding. So the UX analysis is based on button color, it's based on text, and it's based on the presence of a logo, because these are some of the ways that you can change the look and feel of a pop-up. One could also talk about placement of the pop-up. So do we have a large overlay of the website, or are we looking at a small banner in the bottom of the page? But the 2 pop-ups that you see on your screen right now are the ones we recommend all of our clients. So one is an overlay version. It's on top of the page. You have 2 buttons. You have a decline all, you have an accept all. And then in this first view, so to say, you also have the ability to modify your consent based on cookie category or purpose of data collection. Once you adjust any of these toggles, the decline button changes text and functionality to accept whatever you've configured. This would be our standard version, so out of the box, and we'll be talking about that quite a lot. One way that you can manipulate it or alter it would be adding a logo. So I just brought one example. There's a logo in the top of this pop-up. This can be placed many places. And this website has taken in or used their own call to action color in the accept button. Another version that we also decided to look at is a bit sort of in UX terms or in design terms, it's a bit taller. So we're looking at a pop-up that also is placed on top of the website, but we have these toggle functionalities a bit more explained, and we have 3 buttons. So we have an accept all, we have a decline all, and then we have a button in the middle that listens to the toggles. These are, some companies prefer this one, some companies prefer the one with 2 buttons. This would be a designed or a styled version of that. We have a logo, and we have actually some rounded corners on the button, and so on and so forth. But this would be one way to alter it. And the way I'm going to explain our findings is that first we zoom in on the bottom 10%. So what are the common denominators for the bottom 10%? I'll, of course, sort of relate the common denominators to what we find in the top 10%. And then in the next slide, we'll look at the common denominators for the top 10%. All right. So in the bottom 10%, we find that more websites compared to the top 10% are using the version with 3 buttons. And me coming from the field of study that I do, there's at least more than one design theory that's saying giving the user more options means that that you will divide out, of course, what people click. So having more buttons means people use all 3 buttons. Makes sense. Then we found that in the bottom 10%, there was an overweight of companies or websites where the decline button and the accept button was the same color. And one could comment from a usability and accessibility even thinking that if you have two buttons that mean two different things, they shouldn't be the same color. Then we found in the bottom 10% that there was an overweight of websites that used their visual identity or their own sort of call to action color in the accept button. And we found this was only present in the bottom 10%, we found that some had made so many changes to the pop-up that it didn't really look like the standard that we provided or any other standard, actually, that there were so many changes that I've categorized them as custom pop-ups. The reason why I stalled a little bit was because I'm sorry that the last image here is in Danish, but the button on the left says afvis alle, decline all. The bottom on the right says accept all, acceptere alle. If we then look at the top 10%, so what we found was that a common denominator was that many of these websites didn't make any changes to our standard pop-up at all. And that will be interesting in the next couple of slides, why that is, why that's an important finding. We of course found that, so 38 out of 40 only use two buttons, accept all, decline all. And then we found that 28 out of 40, so the top 10%, simply use a green color to communicate accept all. So the implications are, one could say, maybe straightforward, but I hope that this feeds into a conversation of what your company can do in order to maybe try to get more data from the first interaction with your website visitors. So having more buttons gives more choices. So having 3 buttons instead of 2, of course, divides out what people click. A clear recommendation is to not use the same color in both buttons. There's both a sort of a usability feel to it, but I'm pretty sure that there's some website accessibility guidelines here that also comment on the readability of the buttons. They don't mean the same. One means I don't want to share data with you, and the other one means I do want to share data with you. A slight but maybe important indication is that stick with a green accept button. So having green as saying this is a natural choice. And then I think whether you use our content solution or any of the other large providers within this field, so many websites use the same providers that so our pop-up in the Nordics and our competitors worldwide have become sort of a standard that users can decode very quickly. So my clear recommendation, which it wasn't a couple of years ago, but now is, maybe just go with the standard that's provided by one of the top providers within this cookie pop-up field. See what that does for you before you start spending money and time and resources in making changes to these pop-ups. So if you have, and if you do collect data, you should have a cookie pop-up on your website. Try using the industry standard. Find the most used content provider in your country and use that one. Don't build it yourself. Don't go with a free plugin from your CMS system. Don't use something simply because it's cheap or because find the most used one in your country and then go with that one. Go with a design that has 2 buttons. Make it simple. Make the choice transparent. Of course, fully informed, but also make it simple. The user is not on your website to say yes or no to cookies. The user is on your website to get information or purchase your product or sign up to some event that you have. They're not there to engage with your cookie pop-up. Have a contrast between decline and accept all. And then I must, as a final thing, say, always consult with, of course, your local authority guidelines. It varies from country to country. Of course, this is under GDPR, which is European wide. But be aware if there are any local sort of variations in your country. A final thing. I don't expect, and I don't think any of you should expect, going from only 50% of your users say yes to cookies to 92% or 100%. This is the 500 websites sort of divided out based on their consent rates, the 500 websites from Denmark. And the goal here, I would say, is to increase it comparably, like any incremental change is good. 1% more is good, depending where you come from. 10% is really good. So I don't think the goal here is to go from 0 to 100. The goal here is to actively work with your consent rate and thereby unlock more data in your analytics tool. And speaking of unlocking more data, there are technically viable legal ways to actually enrich your data without having more people to say yes. So in Piwik PRO, for example, we work with something called anonymous tracking. And that means that the users that say no to cookies, that you can still enrich a little bit of data. So it can be what campaign they come from, what country they come from. I believe I have an overview here. And 3 other parameters. So instead of having absolutely 0 data, actually these users being invisible on your website, you can at least count them. It's called simple statistics. You can at least count them. You can at least attribute your campaigns and make better campaigns going on forward. So even if you are one of the websites, and that can be brand or design or the way that you acquire leads onto your website or visitors onto your website, if you are one of the websites that have a very low consent rate, there are technologies that allow for you to enrich your data in a perfectly fine way. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm open for questions, and you're also more than welcome to write me if any of this was interesting for you, and if you would like to open a conversation about it or talk about how we maybe could help your company or your websites. Thank you very much for listening, and see you in real life in just a second, where I'm ready to answer questions. Thank you.